What's up guys, I'm in my Mark II GTI. It's got the interior back in it now. I didn't film it just because it was kind of boring stuff. But we're gonna talk about some stuff. We're gonna go over some of the history of the car, what I plan to do with it. We're just gonna do kind of like a build breakdown of what we've done to this point and what we still need to do to get it up and running. Because right now we're at the halfway point of the build pretty much. I feel like we're a little bit over 50% done. I started back in September. I started tearing into the car and got the original 188 valve out of the car. And we're getting somewhat close to being able to fire this thing up for the first time. But I want to go over some of the history of the car, how it ended up in my possession, why I went with the 07K, why I even pulled the original engine out in the first place, and why I'm doing all of this. In terms of history of the car, it's pretty basic. For me, a Mark II GTI was always an attainable dream car. Something that I always liked the look of, and more obtainable for somebody like me who's a teacher who can't really afford a Porsche. So in 2020, when I was a sophomore in college, I found this here beauty of a Mark II GTI on Facebook Marketplace, and the original owner wanted $3 grand for it, which was a fair price to ask for it. Well, I guess it's unfair of me to say that this was an original owner. The original owner was the guy's father, and once the guy that I bought it off of went to high school, it became his car. So technically it's two owner, but I just say original owner because it was in the same family. It didn't go very far. But I picked it up for a whopping $1,500. But it didn't run. And the original owner thought that it was a fueling issue. So there was brand new fuel lines, brand new fuel filter, brand new fuel pump. The whole thing was all new. And still, it didn't run. He couldn't figure it out. So we brought it home and we got to work. We did everything that we thought we could. We cleaned the fuel injectors. We cleaned out the fuel distribution system that used to live right here in the original Mark II. And still, nothing. Then we had the bright idea to make sure the firing order was correct on all the plug wires that ran off the distributor. And well, the plug wires that ran off the distributor were backwards. They were crisscrossed. So we put them in the right order, and boom, the car ran. And then once we got it running, I just drove it. I didn't check a single bolt. I didn't check anything. I just drove it. Which honestly, looking back at it now, was kind of a bad decision. I probably should have checked over some of the bolts because the car sat in the garage for a really long time, over like 20 years. And God knows what could have happened. So I kind of regret that decision, but I'm still alive here to tell you guys this story, so it was fine. But from there, I just daily drove the car. I used to work at Home Depot, and it would take it a 20-mile round trip back and forth to Home Depot. And it was nothing but reliable. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was awesome. But I finally got the itch for modifying a car, and I did my first mods to the car. But it wasn't anything major. The car had the original aero setup, the square headlights, and I decided I wanted to go single rounds. And after that, the itch kept coming. I ordered some coilovers. So as the car sits now, it's on Raceland coilovers. Which honestly, I kind of want to get a nicer set of coilovers, so if any suspension company wants to sponsor you, boy, and send them over some nicer coilovers, I wouldn't be upset. And at that point, I was content with the car. It was lowered, had nice wheels already on it, and it looked good. But see, that's where everything started to go wrong. One night, I was driving the Mark II home, and all of a sudden, the battery light and the oxygen sensor kept flashing on and off. I was like, what in the world happened? Spit and sputtered, and it died. No clue. To this day, I still have no clue. Then, unfortunately, the car sat in my shed for about a year untouched as I went through college and finished my senior year and graduated. But as a graduation gift to myself for earning my bachelor's, I wanted to get the car back up and running and enjoy it again. And that's when I had one of my buddies, Jeremy, take care of it and fix some of the stuff that was wrong with it. And once it was up and running again, we had some issues. It kept throwing alternator belts. But oh well, it is what it is. All things were well, until one day I went out to the driveway to hop in the Mark II to go for a little drive. And that's when I noticed an oil leak in the driveway. As I walked up to the car to look at it, I thought to myself, this car's never leaked oil. Why the hell is it leaking oil now? Per usual, I took a look underneath the hood, went underneath the car, and that's where I saw it. The car was absolutely urinating out of the rear main seal. I had no choice but to pull the engine. As such, I pulled the engine, and I had no experience ever doing this. I've never pulled the engine out of a vehicle, let alone done anything more than change a pair of brakes or put coils on a car. So this was a scary experience, but I told myself the only way to learn is to do. I had to do. But once we got the original 8-valve out of the car, I noticed that the engine bay was really crusty, and I wanted to give it a new life. And that's when I decided to paint the engine bay. Now what is this color? It doesn't look like anything I've ever seen before. Well, it's because it's based off a wrap I had on the car temporarily. The paint on this car wasn't that great. It's single stage and it was 40 years old and it had a bunch of dents. So I decided to wrap it a unique color that I've never seen on a Mark II before. But it turns out wrapping is really hard for some reason. I absolutely love the color and we've deemed it pickle milk. I can't take credit for that. There's some guy out there on Instagram who had his BRZ wrap pickle milk. So if he's out there, shout out to you. So I decided to paint the engine bay, and it turned out half decent, especially for only having a 4.5-gallon rigid air compressor and an LVLP gun. And I've never painted an entire car before, but like I said earlier, the only way to learn is to do. And to be quite honest, it looks amazing from 10 feet away. And that's where I'm going to say, this car's a 10-footer, it'll never be a show car, but as long as it looks good from 5 to 10 feet away, I'm more than happy. So the brand new engine bay, I didn't want to put a crusty 1.8 valve back into the car, and that's where the 5-cylinder comes in. A long time ago, I saw a car on Instagram with a 2.5-liter 5-cylinder 07K into a Mark II Golf from Fabulous Manufacturing. And that's when I became absolutely obsessed with the idea of putting a 5-cylinder in my Mark II GTI. I always try to live my life differently than anybody else. I want to be unique, and I don't want to be the same as another person, because that's boring. And at this point, I know that there's a handful of Mark IIs with the 07K already in them, but I feel as if though I'm one of the first people to actually make content centered around the 07K, but I could be wrong. I don't want to toot my own horn. Or come off as cocky or anything like that. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying, like, I've never really seen content on the 07K in a Mark II, but there's tons of videos on VR6 swap Mark IIs. Don't kill me, please. I'm just making a statement. And obviously, I've got this question a lot. Why 07K? Well, here's why. 1, they're dirt cheap. You can literally get them anywhere. Compared to a 1.8T or a VR6, in my area, they'll run you about $1,000. In addition, everybody and their mother has a Mark II VR6 or a Mark II 1.8T. And that's nothing against those people. I absolutely love that. I just wanted to be different. And number 3, the 07K sounds freaking beautiful. They sound awesome. 5-cylinders are so cool. As everything goes with a car build, I went down the rabbit hole. Once I pulled the engine out and painted the engine bay, I couldn't leave a crusty subframe and control arms in the car, so I refreshed everything. Subframe, control arms, control arm bushings, ball joints, knuckles, brakes and rotors, brake calipers, wheel bearings, steering rack, tie rod ends, suspension bushings. I'm probably forgetting some other things. It's all brand new. Whoops. And an O2J out of a 2000 Beetle that I picked up for $100. And it has a Vallejo single mass flywheel and a heavy duty clutch. But I always get questions. Brett, what are you going to do to the 07K? Are you going to turbo it? Are you going to do this? No. I'm not going to turbo it. And here's why. Mark IIs don't really put power down that well. And with the tune that it'll have on it, it'll be pushing around 180 wheel horsepower, maybe even a little bit more. And that's plenty. The car's 1,900 pounds. I don't need a lot of power. I've never had a car with over 220 horsepower. I had my Mark V GLI, and I had a B784. I'm going to ease into the power thing, honestly. I don't need 300 horsepower in a tin can death trap right off the bat. Then people ask, are you going to leave the 07K stock? Probably, yeah. Maybe down the road I might put a turbo on it, but I think that would be better suited in a different chassis. I love the idea of 07K swapping an E30 with a turbo, but that's only if the YouTube takes off and I can actually make money for building cars. So what else do we need to do to the car to get it running? Not much, honestly. Fabulous Manufacturing's inline fuel regulator / filter, it's on its way. Get the ECU and swap harness back from S&P Automotive, wired it back in, and from there, oh yeah, I also forgot, I need a starter. I do need a starter. That's all I can think of. We already have the fuel lines ran, they're ready to go. Nothing ever goes to plan, so I'm sure something will change along the way. But that's really it for this video. I just wanted to go over some of the history of the car and what I plan to do with it and why I'm doing it in the first place. So if you guys enjoyed this kind of video, please let me know. And if you have questions about the build, please leave them in the comments. I like to answer questions and respond to comments and all that stuff. And if you're new here, do the things. Like, subscribe, comment, do all the stuff. Check out my Instagram, brett.07k. I post a lot more over there. And I want to say thank you guys for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.